is an important dimension of our international activities. It would be probably too early to argue that we have already entered the post-COVID world. Unfortunately, COVID is still with us, and I think that the implications of the pandemic will be with us at least for some time. However, it is also fair to say that the current crisis, and by crisis I mean not just only the pandemic, but also the economic recession, which got a global scale, and many other dimensions of change. This crisis has become a major accelerator for trends which existed even before the pandemic hit the world. For instance, one can argue that the balance of powers in the world is changing with acceleration. Before the pandemic, they usually forecasted the change in the leadership in the global economy by mid 2030s. The perception was that China will surpass the United States as the key driver of the global economy somewhere in the middle of next decade. Today, most of economists believe that this is likely to happen much earlier, maybe already in 2027. We will see a change in the global economic leadership in the world. Likewise, the pandemic has become a major accelerator for the digitalization of the global economy. And I think that we are not likely to get back to where we were just 1 or 2 years ago in terms of how we operate, in terms of how we work, and in terms of how we spend our time. So the changes are unavoidable, the changes are getting faster, and of course these changes have a serious impact on countries like Russia and Pakistan. These two countries are major players, not just in their respective regions, but at the global scene at large. And I think that the current changes create both challenges and opportunities for the Russian Pakistani foreign policy, for how our countries position themselves in this world. I think it's important that today we try to address two broad geographical areas. We're talking about Asia and the position of Russia and Pakistan in Asia in view of the recent developments in this vast continent, but also the Middle East as, of course, one of the most explosive and one of the least stable parts of the world. I think that it would be fair to say that we need to have a closer look at what is going on both in the eastern part of the gross Eurasian landmass, but also what is going on in the western part. We can see new developments. For example, the Biden administration is clearly committed to make the Quad constellation stronger, more active, and to be more persistent in its containment policy of China. On the other hand, we see new opportunities for institutions like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS. Definitely, all alliances have to confront very serious problems. New alliances have to establish themselves and to prove that they are relevant to the current security and development agenda. Let me also say that it's clear that the world has entered a period of deglobalization. We see a significant decline in direct foreign investment. we see a decline in international trade. We see a major crisis, which is still with us, a major crisis in international travel. So there are many manifestations of the globalization decline or retreat. And of course, this is something that we also have to analyze and to deal with. But we should not forget that globalization is an objective phenomenon. And though right now we see a retreat of globalization, but it is easy to predict that in a couple of years, globalization will be back, and we are likely to see an entirely new model of globalization, something very different from what we have seen in the beginning of century. It's important for all countries, large and small, developed and developing nations to get ready for this new cycle of globalization, to make sure that we can make most out of it, and that we will use this opportunity better than the opportunity that we saw in the beginning of the century. And some would argue that the humankind was ill prepared to handle this opportunity. I don't want to take too much of your time. Let me just repeat that we value a lot our cooperation with the Strategic Vision Institute. We think that it's an important dialogue, and I hope that we will continue these conversations on a regular basis. So let me welcome everybody at this meeting and wish you an intellectually rewarding and also very candid and open discussion on the most important trends that we have to watch in Asia and in the Middle East region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kortunov. It is very important for us that we really, started with discussion with the some new model of globalization, and that Dr. Kortunov mentioned that we should be ready, and I think that Russia and Pakistan should also consider that and should be ready for the new cycle of this globalization in the in the coming years. From that start of our discussion, I would like to also give the floor to the president and founder of the Strategic Vision Institute, Dr. Zafar Iqbal Cheema, who is a very distinguished and very respected in Russia professor who we really like to each year to to try to develop the relation between the two institutions of the Russian International Affairs Council and the Strategic Vision Institute. Dr. Cheema will be glad to to invite you for these welcoming remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Ruslan. Uh, Honorable Dr. Andrey Kortunov, His Excellency Shafqat Ali Khan, distinguished participants both from Russia and also from Pakistan. Good morning to the participants from Russia and good afternoon rather to the participants from Pakistan due to 2 hours time difference between the two. I'm very glad that with the strong support and encouragement and technical provisions by the Russian International Affairs Council, SV has been able to organize this function jointly with the Russian International Affairs Council to discuss the various dimensions, particularly in two sessions by Russia-Pakistan cooperation and regional interests in the global context. I think first of all, it's important to note that the global context since the end of the Cold War in 1992 have changed a lot. And there are many geostrategic and many political developments which have taken place and which has enabled Pakistan and Russia to review their relationship And since then the relationship is reviewed. There have been slow but steady progress in Pakistan-Russia relations. There have been relatively better improvement in some of the areas. The improvement is a little slower, but we hope this will also cope up with the other areas as well. Valid better than me that this is a very warm relationship. This is a friendly relationship. Pakistan and Russia are quite close to each other from the diplomatic and political point of view, and the relationship is growing and growing at a quite a satisfactory stage between the two countries. Then the relationship has also transcended from purely political and diplomatic relationship to a defense cooperation between the two countries. Although the defense cooperation between the two countries at an initial stage, we have a defense cooperation agreement under which the Pakistani military personnel may be trained at the Russian institution, and we have a military to military relationship which is growing rapidly since the development between Russia and Pakistan has taken place on a friendly basis. Similarly, we have progress made in the economic development field. Pakistan and Russia has signed a north-south Tala gas pipeline project from Karachi toward Islamabad in the north. Although this has been stagnated for some time, but we hope so that the difficulties will be overcome between the two countries, and we will have this economic relationship stand on a firm basis. The trade between the two countries is, of course, at the moment is not very at the satisfactory level, but it is gradually increasing, and that gradual increase is a sign of hope that there will be a better bilateral trade between Russia and Pakistan. Similarly, Pakistan is an important member of the SCO, in which regional security, regional development, connectivity, and counterterrorism is being discussed at various intervals and at various levels, right from the summit level to lower levels of the echelons in both the countries. And there is a convergence of interest. I think the happy thing to note between Pakistan and Russia is that there is a gradual convergence of interest between Russia and Pakistan in many areas. And there is a gradual decline in the divergence between Russia and Pakistan in all areas possible. So that's a very happy trend which is being established between Russia and Pakistan. Similarly, we have a good cooperation at the various Asian levels, and also the good understanding is developing between Pakistan and Russia in the Near East and in the Middle East, particularly the Gulf regions. I remember Mr. Aslan being invited by the SVI in 2019, February 2019, where we organized a kind of a rapprochement program between Saudi Arabia and Iran. It went very well, and there was a very candid presentation by Mr. Aslan at that time that was very helpful from us to understand that how can the improvement be made better between the two countries. Similarly, there are other areas of convergence which are gradually more and more and expanding between Russia and Pakistan, and the areas of divergence are gradually minimized at the various levels. I think there's a good improvement in South Asia. Russia is now playing a more active role in South Asia in diplomacy and in political terms. We understand Russia has its historical obligations vis-à-vis India, but we are quite satisfied with the progress which has been made by Pakistan and Russia relations. So that augurs well between for the both countries at that level. Similarly, there is a progress, a good understanding at the international dynamics which have been taken place gradually since the end of the Cold War. The international global order is is certainly is going to change and is gradually changing. As Honorable Andrey Kortunov has very rightly mentioned, that we are expecting People Republic of China to economically being a very important and a significant country, which might even take over the United States of America. Similarly, the Indian economy is coming up as the third important or fourth important economy in the world. So Asia is now gradually playing a better role in the global politics and the global order which is developing at the international level. Similarly, there are other developments which are taking place, and what be the time allotted to me is 10 minutes. I will not be able to gloss over all those developments, and eventually our experts from both sides, from Russia side and from Pakistan side, in the session one and session two, will eventually deal with those programs. I would like to beg leave here and wish you a good seminar. Over to Mr. Aslan Mamdo.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cheema. We're very glad to hear such warm words. And as you mentioned, and thank you for your evaluation of the state of the Russia-Pakistani relations. As you mentioned, there is a small but steady progress in the bilateral ties, and we really hope that we will have this steady progress growing. And I'm really pleased, and we are really honored to have with us today His Excellency Shafqat Ali Khan, Ambassador of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan to the Russian Federation. His Excellency served in many countries, and he has a very distinguished academic and diplomatic record. He served as the Deputy Permanent Representative of the Pakistani mission to the United Nations in Geneva, in countries like Poland and China, and now and many other countries. And now we are really honored that he is an ambassador to the Russian Federation. Dr. Shafqat, Your Excellency, kindly, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, sir. First of all, I wish to thank the organizers of the seminar. This is a very timely initiative, and I would, on a personal note, must mention that the notice was rather short, but coming from Dr. Cheema, it's always like an order. He just simply sent a message, you find time and join it. And I must, on a personal note, mention that when I started my career, the first job I had was as a lecturer at the Qaid-e-Azam University. And he held my hand and brought me into, settling me into the new profession. I always remain, he's like a teacher to me. And similarly, I also wish to acknowledge Tariq Usman Haider Saab. In the Foreign Service, he was my teacher. So it's a great honor for me, on a personal note also, to be joining them as a speaker today. I would just speak very briefly and try to give a broad snapshot of Pakistan-Russia relations. And I must say that Dr. Cheema has already covered a lot of ground on that count. And when he was speaking, I was thinking that, you know, your lips and my words. I mean, that was coming to my mind. But thank you, sir, for that. And very briefly, I would want to start my remarks by stating the obvious, that relations with Russia remain an important priority of Pakistan's foreign policy. The two countries in the past 2 decades have sincerely pursued development of friendly, cooperative relations. And today, these relations are marked by deepening trust and expanding win-win cooperation. And I wish to emphasize the point of trust here, that maybe in terms of publicly visible goods, there may be, some people may find that there aren't enough to show. But I think in diplomacy and the kind of relations we want to build, the trust we feel as diplomats here, it's remarkable. The depth of dialogue we have, the frankness we have, the candor we have, the kind of discussion, and the agenda of our discussions is very wide. But the most important thing is, I think it's a great success between the two countries of development of this kind of a strategic trust between the two sides, understanding each other and talking very frankly. Government of Pakistan particularly acknowledges President Vladimir Putin's vision of strong friendly relations between the Russian Federation and Pakistan. And I wish to emphasize, parallel to this, successive governments in Pakistan have invested in relations with Russia as a priority. And this you can see, there have been various governments in the last 20 years in Pakistan. They may not see each other eye to eye on many issues, but on relations with Russia, each government has invested to promote these relations. And the development of strong relations with Russia enjoys strong bipartisan political consensus in Pakistan. And any observer would, I'm not saying something as a part of diplomatics, it is any observer would agree with that. This consensus is rooted in a realistic appraisal of a strategic context, regional dynamics, new challenges in global arena, and normative principles also. I would elaborate upon this point of normative principle later on. Russia is part of our extended neighborhood. Regional stability and security in this part of the world is difficult to sustain without full involvement of the Russian Federation. And both our countries face common threats and challenges, ranging from terrorism and narco trafficking to instability and chaos. In the larger context, we look at Russia as a factor of stability. And I wish to emphasize this. In the larger context, we look at Russia as a factor of stability in the wider Asia and beyond. It is a remarkable achievement of the Russian diplomacy that it has built friendly relations with every country from the Northeast Asia to Levant. This is also mirrored in Russia's excellent relations with the Muslim world, where it enjoys enormous respect and prestige. Most important for us is the premium Russia places on its strategic autonomy. Just as Russia pursues relations with all countries independently, our bilateral relations with Russia stand on their own. This is an important point. They are neither a product of any peculiar geopolitical contingency, nor are they impacted by our relations with third countries. Our growing interaction is not meant to target another country, and in fact represents a model of win-win cooperation in a fraught global and regional context. An important, though less commented aspect of Pakistan-Russia bilateral equation rests on our common approach to the centrality of the UN Charter and adherence to the principles of international law as a basis to bring stability to our increasingly chaotic world. We remain committed to important principles like sovereign equality and non-intervention in internal affairs of states. This is reflected in our common approach to most of the issues on international multilateral agenda. Our diplomats work closely on all important issues, including human rights, humanitarian affairs, economic and social issues, reform of the UN Security Council, disarmament, and emerging issues like cybersecurity and internet governance. This normative convergence provides a ballast to our friendship. Moreover, our cooperation also covers Russia's growing relations with the OIC. We appreciate Russia's opposition to universalizing one particular value system and its championing of issues of concern to the developing countries. Another important aspect is the Eurasian connectivity. The dreams of roads and a network of roads and railways connecting Vladivostok and Tianjin with Hamburg and Rotterdam is, I think, within our grasp now. The political conditions have been created, institutional mechanisms have been created. This is the wave of the future. And the Russian initiative for harmonizing the Greater Eurasian Partnership and with the BRI, I think this opens further avenues for Pakistan-Russia cooperation. We look at it with great interest, and we look forward to further enhancing our cooperation with the Russian Federation in this arena also. We remain grateful to Russia's support to our membership of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. SCO is a bold venture in regional multilateralism based on principles of sovereign equality and common security for its wide membership including most of Eurasia and South Asia. Our membership of SCO has opened new vistas of cooperation and coordination between Pakistan and Russia. We look forward to working together to give greater strength to this important organization. Pakistan and Russia are today working closely for restoration of peace and stability in Afghanistan through an Afghan-led and Afghan-owned peace process. There is remarkable harmony in our approach to this issue. In this vein, let me congratulate the Russian government for the successful meeting of extended Troika in Moscow on 18th March 2021. In the past years, our two countries have been successful in putting in place a solid architecture for exchange of views, consultations, and coordination on a wide range of issues. This architecture encompasses issues from questions of strategic stability and counterterrorism to economic and trade relations. In terms of economic relations, our bilateral trade last year hit an all-time high of $730 million. Yet both sides acknowledge, as rightly pointed out by Dr. Cheema, that this figure still does not reflect the true potential. The economic ministries in Islamabad and Moscow are working to further expand our trade, and we are trying to open new sectors. And I'm happy to report that this year we will see the first export of Pakistani mangoes to Russian Federation on a commercial scale. North-South gas pipeline, which has recently been renamed as Pak Stream, is a concrete project which we hope will become a flagship of Pakistan-Russia economic relations. Our energy ministries are working closely on this, and in the recent weeks, important progress have been achieved. We also note with appreciation Russian Federation's continuing interest in other important projects like revitalization of Pakistan Steel and improvement of Pakistan Railways. The COVID pandemic prevented the convening of the scheduled session of Pakistan-Russia Intergovernmental Commission on Trade, Economic, Scientific, and Technical Cooperation last year in Moscow. We hope the postponed IGC will be convened this year, and various ideas for promotion of Pakistan-Russia economic relations will take concrete shape. Pakistani authorities are also exploring the possibility of organizing a Pakistan-Russia economic conference and a single country exhibition later this year or early next year in Moscow. Bilateral defense relations have also grown in tandem with other aspects of our bilateral relations. The two countries signed the landmark, as again flagged by Dr. Cheema Saab, the two countries signed the landmark Defense Cooperation Agreement in 2014. And since then, defense relations have made important progress. Last year, the fifth round of Druzhba Pakistan-Russia joint military exercises was held in Pakistan. Russian naval ships actively participated in the Aman naval exercise organized by Pakistan Navy. Similarly, a military contingent from Pakistan was an important participant in the Russian military exercise Kavkaz 2020. Both sides underlined the critical importance of strong people-to-people contacts in providing solidity to our growing relations. While in some areas like parliamentary exchanges and cooperation, good progress has been made, others like education cooperation are lagging behind. We are working to bring larger number of Pakistani students to the institutions of higher learning in the Russian Federation. The Russian government has agreed to increase the number of scholarships for Pakistani students. This, we hope, will help shape a trend for younger, bright Pakistani students to pursue higher education in Russia. Overall, we take satisfaction at the steady growth of our bilateral relations. We are convinced that these relations not only serve our respective national interests, but also contribute to regional stability and global security. We remain confident of a very bright future for Pakistan-Russia relations. I thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you for this broad assessment of the Russian-Pakistani relations. We actually also at the expert level reflect this. You mentioned about growing and trust in diplomacy. We're also fixing that in the on the expert level, and here definitely we have a remarkable rise in the in the interest, scientific interest and analytical interest to the international policy analysis from both of these states, from the experts of both of the states. So you also mentioned about the challenges, and you mentioned that there are many common approaches that Russia and Pakistan have today. And from here, I would like to start our first session. And the first session, we, with the colleagues from the Strategic Vision Institute, named as Russia and Pakistan towards mutually beneficial partnership. We already mentioned in the welcoming remarks that there are small but growing progress in these relations, and the idea of this session is to look a bit deeply on the on the current state of the Russia-Pakistan relations, and especially in the context of changing international dynamics, look at what are the foundations and drivers of bilateral ties. We will also discuss the Russia and Pakistan in the framework of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. There are definitely convergence in the approaches of both states in Afghanistan, Central Asia, and other issues. So from here, I would like to give the floor to our first speaker. We have very distinguished speakers from Russian and Pakistani side. I would like to start with the first speaker, like in the program, Mr. Zeeshan Hayat, who is a senior research associate at the Strategic Vision Institute. He has a very, has a very distinguished analytical record, and his dissertation is particularly focused on Pakistan-Russia relations and challenges and prospects for the future cooperation. So I would like to give the floor to Mr. Hayat.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Mehmadov. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Zafar Cheema and the organizer of this webinar for giving me this opportunity to speak on a very pertinent and contemporary topic. As the speakers, honorable speakers before me, very aptly covered the different aspects of Pakistan-Russia relations. So in my talk, there will be some overlapping, but one has to deal with it. So now coming on to the topic quickly because of the paucity of time, I would like to say that if one scans the global environment, it's not difficult to note that the US has increased its struggle to regain global preeminence. The major parts competition has stifled, which is underpinned by the Russia-China entente and the building of Quad axis. So as a consequence of these changes, states are also readjusting their relationship. The relationship between Pakistan and Russia, for example, where countries that were once at odds with each other are now very slowly gravitating toward the rapprochement. Now, looking at some history of the bilateral relationship, it was mostly dominated by the Cold War politics and later by the US global hegemony, in which US was the center of attention of the whole world. The ice between the two countries started melting, especially when President General Musharraf visited Russia in 2003. The joint statement issued after the meeting between the two heads of states mentioned the foundations on which both countries can strengthen their relationship. These foundational areas include close economic interaction, developing contacts in the field of culture, science, and education, combating terrorism and drug trafficking, bringing peace in Afghanistan, cooperation closely in diplomatic forums on strategic stability, and moving towards a just and equitable global political and economic order based on sovereign equality of all states as envisaged in the UN Charter. Now, in the aftermath of this visit by President Musharraf, there have been numerous reciprocal visits by the official of both countries, which helped in advancing the cooperation between the two states. Currently, there are a number of areas which are driving this relationship, which include bringing peace and stability in Afghanistan, strategic stability issues, counterterrorism, and military-to-military cooperation. It is also important to note that Pakistan is also a permanent member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which aims to fight terrorism, extremism, and separatism. And cooperation on these three scourges with the forum as well. During September 2020, Chairman Joint Chief of Staff Committee General Nadeem Raza visited Moscow to attend the Defense and Security Cooperation Conference under the SCO aegis. During his visit, General Raza also met with Chief of General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces and discussed matters of bilateral military cooperation and regional security dynamics. It is also interesting to note that Pakistan will also be hosting the anti-terror military exercise of the SCO member state this year in September, October as well. Now, secondly, bringing peace and stability in Afghanistan is an important area of convergence between Russia and Pakistan. Russia's chief concern from Afghanistan is the spillover effect of instability and drug trafficking to the Central Asian countries that can also affect Russia. Pakistan shared these concerns and repeatedly reiterated that stability in Pakistan is dependent on peace in Afghanistan. There have been several bilateral and multilateral talks involving Pakistan and Russia on this issue, with the latest multilateral talk, also known as Extended Troika, happened on 18th March 2021. Afghanistan is a serious area of concern for both countries, and cooperation between the two with the shared objective of bringing peace and stability in Afghanistan, which will also help in increasing connectivity between the two countries, can be further increased. Islamabad and Moscow are also conducting regular talks under the banner of Pakistan-Russia Consultative Group on Strategic Stability. The 13th meeting of this group was held in Islamabad in March 2019, in which issues such as non-militarization of outer space, upholding bilateral and multilateral in the field of information and telecommunication in the context of international security were discussed. Both states have similar views when it comes to matters like non-militarization of outer space. On 22nd May 2019, Pakistan and Russia have pledged on no first placement of weapons in outer space. The joint statement highlighted that Pakistan and Russia share a common position on the prevention of arms race in outer space and work collectively at various international fora toward that goal. Now, coming on to counterterrorism, counterterrorism cooperation is another area where the militaries of the two sides are engaging regularly. Both countries are conducting bilateral counterterrorism military exercises since 2016, with the latest one was held in Pakistan in November 2020. Pakistan has also been participating in international multi-party military exercises in Russia since 2019, with the latest participation in Caucasus 2020 in September. There is also a joint working group on counterterrorism between the two countries, whose last meeting was held in November 2019 in Moscow. Now, coming on to the military-to-military cooperation, which is becoming a regular feature of Pakistan-Russia bilateral ties, the foremost step in this cooperation was the Russian decision to lift the self-imposed arms embargo against Pakistan in 2014. After that, Pakistan purchased 4 Mi-35 attack helicopters from Russia for counterterrorism cooperation, and non-combat Mi-171E helicopters have also been delivered to Pakistan. In 2015, Pakistan also signed a deal with Russia to import Klimov RD-93 engines for the JF-17 Thunder aircraft. Though this is not a significant defense cooperation history of relation during Cold War, even these baby steps are very important. Now, coming on to the conclusion of my talk, I would like to say that Pakistan-Russia relations are moving in the right direction, and it will take consistent efforts to convert these into a strategic one. There is a need to improve economic and people-to-people ties between the two countries. The bilateral trade countries stand at approximately around $600 million, which needs improvement. The resolution of debt issue between the two countries last year and new understanding on the construction of north-south gas pipeline in Pakistan are positive developments, which can help in boosting the trade ties. And people-to-people interaction can be increased by exchange of university students and building cultural cooperation. I will end my talk here and will be happy to answer any question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hayat. Thank you for your assessment and overview of the current state of the Russia-Pakistani relations. And we definitely agree with you on that. We need consistent efforts to improve, to continue, develop these relations. And here I'm glad that, and I'm honored to introduce our next speaker, who is the leading Russian expert on the history of Pakistan and Russia-Pakistani relations, Professor Vyacheslav Belokrinitsky. He is the head of the Center for the Study of Near and Middle East at the Institute of Oriental Studies of the Russian Academy of Sciences. Vyacheslav Yakovlevich, kindly, we would like to ask you to share your view on the state of Russia-Pakistani relations. And I would like to mention one technical thing. We are fixing very good traffic and very good interest from the audience in our event, and so I think that we will continue in this direction. Vyacheslav Yakovlevich, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes, it's quite well connection.
Well, thank you very much. I'm really honored and thankful to the organizers of this event, of this webinar. And I'm happy to see so many people whom I happen to know. Dr. Andrey Kortunov, Dr. Zafar, Iqbal, Cheema, His Excellency Shafqat Ali, and some other probably who will join us later on. This is really a great privilege for me to speak on this issue of Pakistan-Russia relations, and I would like to begin with felicitations and congratulations of the Pakistani people with their I would like to congratulate them on the Pakistani Day that we are celebrating on the 23rd of March. I wish all the best to the Pakistani people and prosperity to the country of Pakistan. As for the topic of my speech, I would like to concentrate strictly on number one of the agenda, that is the current state, or the state of Pakistan, Russia-Pakistan relations. And I would like to stress what already has been stressed during our meeting, that the relationship between our two countries at the present moment are good. We know from the history of our relations that there were episodes of good and bad relations. I would say that I would consider the worst period was one of that Soviet direct involvement in Afghanistan in 1979, 1989. After that, there was a stagnation of relations, and only there were some efforts taken by different governments in Pakistan and in Russia to upgrade these relations, but only during the last, say, 10 years or so, we had achieved, I think, some formidable, tangible results in this direction. And at present, we have good relations in all the spheres of our relations. in the economic and trade relations, in the political and diplomatic field, and the defense and security sphere, and in the probably less so in the humanitarian, what my colleagues have mentioned, people to people sphere, but this is probably an objective factor, and it takes probably more time and more efforts to make improvements in this particular and very important sphere. You know that in the Soviet time, we used to consider economy is the basis of relationship, and the social life, and politics is the superstructure. But it turned out to be not so, as economics and politics are interrelated and both are important. But still, we cannot disregard the basic importance and significance of the economic and trade ties. Therefore, I will first of all speak and say some words about the relations in this sphere. Though the volume of our trade is not so big,
वैक्सीनेशन का अमल शुरू हो चुका है, लेकिन जाती एहतियाती तदाबीर की और इन पर अमल ना करने से बीमारी और अफवाह.
Unfortunately, so okay, yes, it is about six. It's in the middle of the last decade. It has reached $600 million US dollars. And this is the peak in our relationship, in our trade turnover during the last decades. Nowadays, we have a very important feature in this relationship. It is more or less balanced. Previously, it used to be unbalanced in the sense that Pakistani export exceeded Pakistani import, and in 2018 the balance has been reached, and the Russian export to Pakistan was $260 million, was equal to $260 million, and the import was $280 million. And the major item of our export, Russian export to Pakistan, is metal products, machinery, equipment, and the major item of the Pakistani export to Russia is the textile goods, and agricultural goods, actually food and agricultural products. Therefore, we have a very fruitful exchange, and I would say a very productive exchange of the goods that we can exchange. The second sphere is the economic cooperation. In the economic cooperation, now we have a leading sector. This sector is the energy sector. And as it has been already mentioned, we have achieved certain progress in this field. In 2015, an agreement was signed to construct a gas pipeline from the seaport of Karachi to Lahore, the industrial heart of the Punjab and the whole country. And it was named the North-South gas pipeline. One wonders why not South-North pipeline. Still in all this, there turned to be some hurdles in the way of implementing of this project. And only recently, in the end of the last year, after the meeting of Russia-Pakistan Technical Committee in Islamabad, these hurdles were removed, and there was an agreement reached that this pipeline, a big diameter pipeline, will be constructed it transports 1.6 billion cubic feet per day. It's a big amount of gas to be transmitted from Karachi to Lahore. And the name of the project has been changed into Pakistan Stream Gas Pipeline. In addition, the talks continue concerning the delivery of Russian LNG, liquefied natural gas, to Pakistan for its regasification and its usage in thermal power plants. Cooperation in the energy sector can be considered to be a solid foundation and real trigger in bilateral relations. Pakistan still needs improvements in the production of electricity, though the production capacities has been increased and very quickly increased during the last years. But in its transmission and distribution, there are certain shortcomings. I think that energy is still and all very important. It is actually a key factor in the upgrading and the further development of the Pakistani manufacturing. I think the energy sector can make the Pakistani textile products cheaper, and it will increase the export of these textile goods and textile products to outer world and to Russia in particular. I would like to emphasize the importance of the energy sector, and I would like to mention that there are certain other fields of possible development. Pakistani-Russian cooperation in certain fields. Let us say, first of all, the Pakistani steel mill has been already mentioned by His Excellency, the Ambassador of Pakistan to the Russian Federation. I would like to mention also this: something has to be done with this Pakistan steel mills that is closed, that has been not working for the last 5 years. Then there are prospects in the transportation sector. Railways, the Pakistani railways can probably share some experience from the Russian state company, very important and very prominent state company, Russian Railways. Probably these consultations can be of help in upgrading the Pakistani railway system. Then there is a very striking feature of today's relationship is that we don't have regular air connections. Flights from Moscow to Islamabad, to Karachi are not regular, as far as I know. And in the 70s, we used to have no problems in going from Moscow to Karachi and back. I think this should be improved, and this is one of the possibilities where we should definitely use. And finally, I would say that probably it is timely to establish a committee, a consultative committee, consisting of experts from both sides to think over and suggest promising fields and means of cooperation. And this committee can work either offline or online as we do now. So let's hope that this will help in upgrading and in furthering our good already, decent and probably very very good relationship that we do have now, but there is scope for improvement, of course, every time and in every field, and in this field in particular. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Professor Belogornitsky. Thank you for your assessment of the economic side of the story. And it is really not amazing that the energy sector could be a good driver for these relations, since the two countries are really interested in that. Also, thank you for the overview of the projects that we already have and their prospects. Definitely, I think that some of the proposals you mentioned in the end of your speech, they should be kept in mind in the decision making. And I think that these proposals to upgrade I would like to use this word as upgrade the relations could be a good starter. And from here, I would like to move further. We are opening. We continue our first session, but we are opening another topic within the first session. We will talk a lot because of the next two distinguished speakers from Russia and Pakistan. We will talk a lot on the non-proliferation issues. And here I would like to remind you that we have two sessions, and the first one ends in 20 minutes. And because of that, I would like to ask our next two speakers to be a bit, on time. We have from 7 to 10 minutes for the speaker. And then we will move to the break for the 10 minutes and the second session. The second session is on the Russian and Pakistani approaches in the Middle East and towards security in the Gulf area, which is really important for both of the states, and they both have initiatives on that. We even published last year together with the Strategic Vision Institute, and we really value that we published a joint report on this issue, but we will talk about that in the second session. So I would like to bring in our next speaker, our next distinguished speaker, and he has a really great diplomatic background, participating in the various negotiations on the nuclear disarmament, on the anti-terrorism mechanisms, on the non-proliferation issues. I would like to invite Ambassador Tariq Osman Haider, who is the Distinguished Visiting Fellow at the Strategic Vision Institute and the Distinguished Visiting Fellow at the National Defense University of Islamabad. Dr. Tariq Osman Haider, could you kindly...
Yes, thank you very much, moderator. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ujjaima colleague, Dobre den. Good day, honored colleagues. Looking back at the sweep of Pak-USSR, then Russia relations since the inception of diplomatic relations in 1948, one thing is clear, that the relations with Russia are of immense importance to Pakistan. There have been missteps and misperceptions on both sides, with ups and downs, which have necessitated a steady and successful process of trust building in the last so many years. To give one example, it is widely believed that Prime Minister Liaquat Ali Khan turned down the invitation to visit the USSR and instead went to the USA. In fact, he was keen for the visit to take place, and his team had been assembled, including a young army officer, Sabzada Yaqub Khan, later our foreign minister, who was picked up then because he had picked up Russian as a POW during the Second World War. Negotiations for the visit had begun through our ambassadors of both countries in Tehran, but when they were switched to Delhi, they became stalled, and hence the Prime Minister went first to Washington. India has remained a factor in constraining military and other cooperation with Pakistan, as President Putin admitted to President Musharraf in their meeting in 2006 in New York on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, which I attended. I was present. During the Cold War, relations were difficult, as again after the 71 war with India, and again during the Soviet involvement in Afghanistan. In the intervening period, Russian peacemaking at Tashkent to end the 65 Indo-Pak War gave the political boost which unlocked both economic and military cooperation. This is also the case in 1972 when Prime Minister Bhutto visited Moscow and economic cooperation restarted. After the Afghanistan involvement ended, relations again improved. The Soviet Union built the Karachi steel mills, major thermal power facilities at Muzaffargarh, Guddu, and elsewhere, and helped Pakistan in the establishment of the OGDC, the Oil and Gas Authority. The 1.1 million tons Pakistan steel mill became the largest industrial project in Pakistan. Thousands of young engineers and technicians were sent to Russia to master technology in many disciplines. Many Russians came here to teach and build in Karachi. The construction and other expertise gained in the process led to the deployment of many Pakistanis throughout Pakistan, but also in the wave of Pakistani labor technicians and engineers assisting in infrastructure and other construction projects in the Gulf and Middle East, whose foreign remittances largest their families in this country benefit to this day. There has been a consistent effort on the part of Pakistani leaders and political parties to improve relations with Russia. And Russia, notwithstanding its traditionally priority relationship with India, has also recognized the importance of Pakistan as a middle power, its strategic location as a tri-junction between the Middle East, Central and South Asia, and the role it can play in stabilizing Afghanistan. Afghanistan, which poses both an ongoing narcotics threat to Russia and a potential threat from terrorists. The upward trajectory of our bilateral relations is encouraging. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which we joined with Russian and Chinese help and support, and the UN General Assembly have been in the past 2 years provided opportunities for talks between the two leaders and the two foreign ministers, as has been happening, including in Moscow over the years. I hope that Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov may come to Islamabad soon, even maybe shortly, which would be a great boost. Trade has not reached the potential it could have, as it hovers around $500 million a year overall, with a balance in Pakistan's favor, except when we preferred to import wheat from Russia, which we did because it was a reliable supplier, and it was $200 million or $250 million of wheat. And then the trade went up to $780.6 million overall. There are systemic hurdles, including lack of direct flights, as the previous speaker mentioned, banking issues because of American sanctions, and slow 2 months processing issue of business visas by the Russian side that need to be overcome to enhance trade. Institutional mechanisms are working well. 4 rounds of political consultations at the foreign secretary level have been held. The consultative group on strategic stability has met 13 times since its first meeting in 2003, when I had the privilege of leading our side, and in the next 2 meetings as well. On the economic side, the Intergovernmental Commission on Trade, Economic, Scientific, and Technical Cooperation has held 6 meetings and has a number of joint working groups. Pursuant to the Pakistan-Russian military agreement of 2017, a joint military technical commission was set up, military sales explored, 5 joint military exercises held, 2 counterterrorism, 2 joint naval exercises apart from Russian naval ships' participation in the multilateral Amman exercises hosted by the Pak Navy, and 6 rounds of military staff talks, the latest just earlier this month. Amongst other mechanisms, given limited time, I will only draw your attention to the Joint Coordination Committee on the North-South Gas Pipeline, which is pivotal. Given that a political and institutional infrastructure has been built and convergence is recognized, especially on Afghanistan, gas infrastructure development what should be Pakistan's objective? To reap the benefits of the relationship that has been built up, and our desire to benefit from China's BRI and the Russia's Eurasian Economic Community. Where do we go from here? How do we prioritize? That is the key question. What should be Pakistan's key objective? On the political diplomatic side, it is clear a closer relationship with Russia has obvious advantages in the region and beyond. What leverage can we get from this better relationship? Our key objective, I suggest, should be to get the north-south pipeline, the Park Stream, it's now called the Karachi to Lahore LPG pipeline, off the ground. The agreement was signed in 2015. In negotiations since then, various hurdles have been cleared, and most recently, in an enabling addendum or document at the end of last month, a document has been agreed, which only needs to be executed for things to start. I will not go into the technical details that the cost may go up from $1.5 to $2.5 billion if the original planned diameter is increased to cater for projected higher demand, and that Pakistan will bear greater financial share, as the government has stipulated to the Supreme Court of Pakistan, which called for the utilization of the Gas Infrastructure Development Cess, GIDC. Once this mega flagship project takes off, it will begin a process of unlocking various constraints across the board. We must regard it as a strategic opportunity. Looking further ahead on the economic side, one would hope that when the steel mill is retendered for again, Russia would be given the chance to restart it. When the steel mill was set up by Russia, 4 other equivalent capacity steel mills around the world, including Iran and India, were set up. Each of these other steel mills, apart from ours, soon doubled its capacity and went beyond. What happened to the Pakistan steel mill is well known. We should not squander the opportunity to put it back on its feet and to enhance its capacity. In conclusion, we must focus on Park Stream. As it progresses on the ground, it will have a positive knock-on impact on deepening bilateral and multilateral understanding, trust, political, economic, and business relations, connectivity, military ties, counterterrorism, and cooperation in our region, in our bilateral relations, including on stabilizing Afghanistan. Lagadaria wa Zaimat. Thank you for your attention. I think I'm just within the 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Definitely just within the 10 minutes. I would like to again thank you for strict prioritizing for both, not only for Pakistanis but also for the Russians, prioritizing issues that we have in our relations. And thank you for sharing with us your view on the objectives that both states have today. And definitely this focus on the Park Stream, this is something that is important. We definitely see that from the speeches of the Russian participants and also senior Pakistani participants. I think that this is something that should be kept in mind in the within the decision by the decision makers. And thank you, for this historic view in the beginning that you made. This is, I think, very important for not only established researchers but also the researchers of the new generation that we have raising today in Russia and in Pakistan. From here, I would like to also give the floor to our next speaker, to Professor at the Department of Theory and History of the International Relations at the St. Petersburg State University, Dr. Andrey Pavlov. Dr. Pavlov is his key interests are the strategic studies and the international arms control negotiations, nuclear strategy and arms control. I would like to bring Dr. Pavlov.
From Daddy's book.
Coffee.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this extremely interesting event. Frankly speaking, our contacts with our Pakistani colleagues are not so extensive as that of my predecessors. Probably the starting point was 2 years ago when Brigadier General Zahir Kazmi was so kind to stay for a couple of days in St. Petersburg on his way to Moscow, and he delivered a lecture to my students about arms control environment and stability in South Asia. And that was really a starting point of our contacts, because since that time we keep in touch and exchange our opinions on that vitally important issues regularly, and I hope we will continue that. So I'm heading master program called Strategic and Arms Control Studies at St. Petersburg State University, and I would like to concentrate on that issue very briefly and highlight the possibility of dialogue with Pakistani colleagues in the future. I think that the issues of strategic stability and specifically nuclear risk reduction are 2 points, two sources, two fields where Russian and Pakistani interests coincide completely. And we both agree that today there is a kind of a negative trend in strategic stability, not just in some regions, but globally. We both admit that problem have to be discussed and have to be dealt with on a regular basis. But Russia and Pakistan have very different experience in both these realms. And Russian vision of strategic stability is mostly shaped by Russian dialogue with the United States and NATO, and long history of exchange of opinions, which resulted in some agreements in this field. But this experience is not appropriate for the South Asia and for other regions, as my colleagues from Pakistan demonstrated in their publications appeared for the last years. So I think that we, besides that strategic stability dialogue on the governmental level, which was mentioned several times already today by my distinguished colleagues from Russia and Pakistan, we, I think, can and should engage into an expert dialogue to develop a kind of a common language in the field of strategic stability. Because that common language is necessary for intergovernmental dialogue and for future probably negotiations on strategic stability and maybe arms control too. That kind of expert discussion preceded in history in the past the arms control negotiations between Russia and other countries, mostly United States and Western Europe. Okay, and second realm where we, I think, can cooperate with our colleagues from Pakistan is the question of nuclear risk reduction, because we also have very different experiences in that field, very specific experiences. The dialogue in here can be kind of a experience exchange, because we both acknowledge that the nuclear risks are growing, and this is widely accepted in world expert discourse in the field. So this dialogue can be a kind of mutually beneficial. I was so much interested in Pakistani experience in nuclear risk reduction field, and I could evaluate how different it is from our experience. And the final point is that probably Shanghai Cooperation Organization can be kind of a platform for that dialogue, with prospective involvement of other nuclear weapon states, and there are 4 of them, 2 members of the NPT and other 2 are not. And I think Shanghai Cooperation Organization is a good platform to start this dialogue, then transform it into a multilateral discussion, which would help, I mean, on the expert level, which would help the governments to find some points where we can cooperate on the interstate level. Well, that's basically my point, and thank you for your attention. Ready to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Pavlov. I would like to, again, very on time, and thank you for being very precise on your points. I think that definitely we had covered most of the issues we had, and I would like to thank you for the specific significance that you made to the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, as the platform for extensive new and platform that can give new dynamics to this discussions around the nuclear issues and security. So definitely just because of the risks are growing, as you said. So here I would like to mention that we have we are just on time. We just ended our session just because of the program. I can't give the opportunity for the audience to ask the questions because we're just on time. It's 11:20, and we have a break for 10 minutes. And right after this break, we are coming back for the second session. We had very important and very interesting discussion as of today to this particular minute. I hope we'll continue this discussion in 10 minutes. And I would like to also mention that I will share my role of a moderator with His Excellency Qazi Khalilullah. Qazi Muhammad Khalilullah will moderate the second session on the Russian and Pakistani approaches to the security in the Gulf area, and maybe some priorities for the Russia and Pakistan. We have there very distinguished speakers, and I would like to mention that Ambassador has a great diplomatic record, being presented in a number of expert and working groups within the United Nations, and he served as an ambassador for the last years to various countries, including Myanmar, Cuba, and as well as this is the most important issue for us in Moscow. He quite successfully, very successfully served in the Russian Federation as an ambassador of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan to the Russian Federation till the 2019. So from here, I would like to end this session, and we will meet in 10 minutes. And Ambassador Qazi Khalilullah will chair the discussion in the second session. Thank you very much.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes, Vasily, everything is great. We hear you well, and we are glad that you're with us.
Thank you.
We are waiting, I think, for 1 minute to Kazi Khalilullah to come and start the discussion.
Okay.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Khalilullah, you can start the discussion. I think that we are ready. We have all our speakers here. Kindly switch on the mic.
Is it okay now?
Yes.
Can you hear me? All right. Thank you. Thank you, Gasparin Ruslan Mamido, for handing over the second session to me. And also, thank you very much for my introduction to the speakers. At the outset, let me say that my stay in Moscow as ambassador was very productive. And I had fullest cooperation from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia, as well as other state organizations. I enjoyed living in Moscow and making friends because the people of Russia are very friendly and hospitable. So I left Moscow with very good memories. Coming to the topic of the second session, which is Russia and Pakistan and the Middle East approaches to security in the Gulf. As agreed, I have about 7 to 10 minutes, and let me share my thoughts with the speaker. The speakers of today, maybe this will set the tone for our session. As you know, the recent Persian Gulf crisis was triggered by President Trump's decision to withdraw from the JCPOA in 2018. However, all was not well before that in the region. A number of developments in the region that took place prior to the US withdrawal from JCPOA had vitiated the atmosphere, caused escalation, increased tensions, and impacted the status quo and balance of power in the Persian Gulf. As we know, two major developments took place in the region in 2005, one negative and one positive. In March, a coalition of Arab countries led by Saudi Arabia militarily intervened in Yemen against the Houthis. And on the positive side, JCPOA was signed by the P5, Germany, EU, and Iran. On 2nd January 2016, Saudi Arabia executed Nimr al-Nimr, a prominent Shia sheikh, on charges of shooting policemen during anti-government protests. It led to massive protests against the Saudi embassy in Iran, which was ransacked by Iranian protesters. The incident led to rupture of diplomatic ties between Saudi Arabia and Iran. On that occasion, both Prime Minister and Army Chief of Pakistan undertook shuttle diplomacy between Iran and Saudi Arabia to de-escalate the situation. In June 2017, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, and Egypt severed diplomatic ties with Qatar and banned Qatar-registered planes and ships from utilizing their airspace and sea routes, along with Saudi Arabia blocking Qatar's only crossing. It was considered to be punishment for Qatar's ties with Muslim Brotherhood and Iran. However, as I said earlier, the recent Persian Gulf crisis was triggered by President Trump's decision to withdraw from JCPOA in 2018. The unilateral withdrawal of the US was followed by US policy of maximum pressure against Iran, which involved reimposition of sanctions and economic strangulation of Iran. At the time, interestingly, Iran was in full compliance of the JCPOA conditions, and it remained in compliance for a full year after Trump's decision to withdraw. The purpose of Iran was to give chance to European signatories of JCPOA to deliver their part of the bargain, bypassing US sanctions. But they couldn't. Iran therefore began to break the rules. From July 2019, Iran began to pursue a strategy of phased partial withdrawal from the nuclear agreement. In January 2020, Iran ended its commitments to nuclear deal. It is noteworthy that both Russia and China stood by Iran despite the threat of US sanctions. Tensions between the US and Iran began to rise after waivers granted by the US to biggest buyers of Iranian oil expired in April 2019, and designation of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps as a foreign terrorist organization. Starting in early May 2019, the US began buildup of its military presence in the region to deter Iran. Subsequently, several merchant ships in the Persian Gulf were damaged in two incidents in May and June 2019. Western nations blamed Iran, however, Iran denied any involvement. In June 2019, Iran shot down an American surveillance drone flying over the Strait of Hormuz, sharply increasing tensions and nearly resulting in an armed confrontation. In September 2019, drones were used by Houthis from Yemen to attack two state-owned Saudi Aramco oil processing facilities in the eastern part of the country. It underlined, among other things, the strategic threat posed by the Houthis to Saudi oil installations. Again, on this occasion, tensions were very high between Iran and Saudi Arabia. The Prime Minister of Pakistan undertook shuttle diplomacy to de-escalate the situation. In January 2020, the commander of Iran's Quds Force, Qasem Soleimani, was assassinated at Baghdad airport in a US drone strike. And Iran's supreme leader on the occasion pledged to take revenge on the US forces. The US and Iran nearly entered into an open conflict on 8th January 2020 when the IRGC launched missile attacks against two military bases of US in Iraq, injuring more than 100 US troops. As Iran's response to all US provocations was to defy the logic of coercive diplomacy, President Trump's maximum pressure campaign against Iran therefore utterly failed to enhance regional or global security. The developments in the region once again highlighted the need for a new security architecture in the Persian Gulf. In the recent past, when we talk about new security architecture, three proposals for a security architecture in the Persian Gulf by the US, Iran, and Russia come to light. Number one, during President Trump's visit to Riyadh in May 2017, Middle East Security Alliance, or MISA, was announced as a holistic partnership between the GCC members and Egypt and Jordan, with a declared aim of achieving peace, stability, and development on regional as well as international stages. Number two, in 2019, President Rouhani of Iran invited all the states in the region to join Iran's Hormuz Peace Endeavor, or HOPE, with the declared goal of promoting peace, stability, and welfare for all residents of the Strait of Hormuz region. The third proposal is Russian proposal for collective security in the Gulf. It espouses a regional and multilateral approach in developing a security system by holding bilateral and multilateral consultations between interested states, including the UN Security Council. Let me now briefly talk about two positive developments that have taken place in the Persian Gulf recently. Number one, in January 2021, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Bahrain and Egypt restored diplomatic relations with Qatar, and Saudi Arabia opened its borders to Qatar. Number two, on 22nd March 2021, Saudi Arabia put forward a peace initiative to bring the conflict in Yemen to an end. The proposal includes, among other things, UN-supported nationwide ceasefire and the resumption of political dialogue. Let me now say a few words about the fate of Iranian nuclear deal under President Biden. Biden, as a candidate, had called the US withdrawal from the JCPOA a significant mistake and promised to take the US back to the deal. However, the Biden administration has so far stressed that Iran must first comply with its original obligations under the JCPOA and reverse the steps it has taken throughout the 2 years to improve its nuclear program. Iran, on the other hand, has insisted on lifting of UN sanctions first. However, indications are that both sides are inclined to agree to a synchronized steps involving gradual lifting of the US sanctions on Iran in return for Iran's compliance with the nuclear deal. In conclusion, I wish to underscore that security and stability in the Persian Gulf are important for all countries, for energy security, development of the region, and protection of the holy places, both of Sunni and Shia Muslims. Peace and stability in Persian Gulf are particularly dear to Pakistan for both economic and religious reasons. Pakistan is committed to the protection of the two holy mosques in Saudi Arabia. Nearly 5 million Pakistan nationals work in the Gulf states, mainly in Saudi Arabia and UAE. Pakistan imports its oil and gas requirements mostly from the Gulf region, which is also a source of foreign remittances of about $10 billion a year. At the same time, we are delighted to note positive trajectory of Russian relations with the Gulf countries since its return to the Middle East in 2015. That 2 days ago, Iran and China signed a 25-year strategic cooperation pact, signifying the latest expansion of Beijing's flagship trillion-dollar Belt and Road Initiative. It would be helpful to Iran, among other things, in ending its isolation in the region. We have also seen last week's statement of CEO of Saudi Aramco that it would prioritize energy supply to China for the next 50 years. However, economic cooperation cannot flourish without security and stability in the region. I therefore feel that countries of the Persian Gulf if offered a platform, rather venue, might favorably look at a proposal for a security architecture that is inclusive, is based on the principle of non-interference in internal affairs of others, ensures mutual respect and protects interests of all countries. In my opinion, Russian proposal for collective security holds a promise if pursued in the same way as Moscow format of consultations on Afghanistan. I would be happy to expand on this during the Q&A session. I would now like to introduce the speakers of this session. Our first speaker is Dr. Vasily Kuznetsov. He is based He is head of Center of Arab and Islamic Studies, Institute of Oriental Studies of the Russian Academy of Sciences, and also a member of RIAC. Our second speaker is Ambassador Arif Kamal. He is a former ambassador to Qatar and a very seasoned diplomat. He is a member of the advisory board of Strategic Vision Institute. Our third speaker will be Dr. Julia Rocknifat, Assistant Professor, University of Nottingham, Malaysia campus. She is also a member of RIAC. Last speaker of the session is Ms. Ayosha Khan, a Senior Research Associate at the SVI. So thank you for bearing with me. And now I would like to offer the floor to Dr. Vasily Kuznetsov. Please.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you for your very interesting and I would say comprehensive introduction in the topic, and for your perspective of the problem of the security system of the security situation in the Gulf. We have 4 discussion points in our program. I will try to say something on every of it. I will start with some general problem on the regional security architecture. If non-exclusiveness of in the Persian Gulf is possible to achieve or not. I think that one of the general problems of the regional security in the Persian Gulf and in the Middle East as a whole is that since the decolonization, the security system in the region has been based on exclusiveness. It's always was an exclusive system, and I think that now, while we are discussing the positive of some comprehensive or inclusive system, the problem is that we have to change the regional political culture, the regional political tradition. Is it possible to achieve? I think yes, it's possible. Finally, if we take European experience, European political system, regional system also for centuries had been exclusive. Then everything has changed. But Europe had to pass through very difficult and very painful time to rebuild a regional political system. I think that while we're talking about Iran and Saudi Arabia, because sure, the main problem of the regional political system is the Iranian-Saudi relations and not other tracks. If we take this case, one of the problem is the problem of that until now we don't know how to analyze. We have two, I will say, we have two perspectives to analyze the problem, the issue. The first is the religious. The second is the analyze through the prism of national competence of two nationalisms. Is the region, if all the members would be agree that the problem is not in the religious competence, not in the concurrence between Shia and Sunni, but between two nationalisms, it will be easier to resolve the problem. Because finally, the world has very good and positive and productive experience of building regional architecture where all the elements share their own national identities and national ideologies. But if we try to build the system on the basis of the religious competence, it will be much more difficult, because competence between two forms of religion is a zero-sum game. It's never it's impossible to find any compromise. I think that in both countries, in both I would say political elites, there are different perspectives of the regional situation and different motivations of their foreign policies. We can't say that there is only nationalisms or only religious motivations from the both sides. There are both. So while working with these countries, all the external actors should try to support these national motivations and not the religious. Is the first problem. At the same time, taking into consideration this experience, the regional experience of exclusiveness, I don't think that today it would be reasonable to talk about some comprehensive or inclusive system. It could be comprehensive, but it can't be inclusive. I think that in Russian proposal, Russian concept of the regional security system in the Gulf, there is very productive, potentially productive idea that the process of the regional security building should be a step-by-step process. I think that we can, for the moment, we can't, there is no reasons to discuss the perspective, the prospect of any regional conference on the security system or something like this, on some common document on the issue, but it should be it would be productive. I am absolutely agree with our moderator that it would be productive to develop the issue step by step, with starting with some elements of the system, and Islamabad and Moscow could play a positive role in this problem, in this process. taken into using our experience of Afghanistan talk or Syrian talks of 2015 or inter-Palestinian talks. I think that one of the elements of the new regional system, which we can start with it could be maritime security. We have good experience, Russian-American, Soviet-American agreement of 1970s, which was signed in the 1970s, and we can use this experience to build some new confidence measures. Confident measures between between all the GCC states. Also, I think that we should include in the process some neutral GCC states like Kuwait and Sultanate Oman. They are included already. So if we look at our mediation cases in the region, like Libya, for example, or like Syria, or like Yemen, we can see that one of the problem is the last years is that we don't have only a armed conflicts in these states, but also we have a competence of mediators. We have so many tracks of mediation, so many formats of mediation that they don't help each other. Now we have Russia, which is more or less neutral, have Pakistan with also neutral and with good influence on both sides. And we have Sultanate Oman and Kuwait, who try to play positive role in as a mediator in the process. I think that it could be a basis to form a mediation quartet for GCC region. I think now it could be a good moment for the process. Not only because of our goodwill, but also because of the situation in the United States. I think that Rob Marley, who is a who now is responsible for Iranian dossier in Washington D.C., could be very effective guy. He is one of the best American specialists in the Middle East, but foreign politics and especially Middle East isn't a priority for this administration for the moment. So it creates for us some window of opportunity to do something for several months, maybe until the end of the year. Now the last events in Suez, they showed us that the maritime security is very important, and they motivate the regional actors to do something. So I think that it can be an issue. So I'll stop here. I don't think that, I think that after it, we'll talk about GCPOA more in Q&A, or our participants will focus on the issue. I will focus on it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. I think your reference to Russian experience of mediation is something that can be useful in addressing the problems in the Persian Gulf, and also your thoughts about beginning with maritime security. Also, you referred to religious fault lines in the area, and it is advisable to stay away from them. Our next speaker is Ambassador Arif Kamal. Interestingly, when I arrived in Moscow in July 1988, sorry, he was first secretary, and we used to live at the end of Leninsky Prospect. And since we are all friends here, he had Russian Niva, and I didn't have my transport by then. So for about a month until I bought my car, he provided pick and drop services to me, although being a very senior diplomat at that point of time. So I remain grateful to date for the courtesies that you showed to me when I was a young diplomat and we were living very close to each other. You have the floor, sir. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
I think maybe some technical problem because we don't have him with us. Maybe we can continue with the other speaker and then back to Ambassador.
All right. Our next speaker would be Dr. Julia Rocknifat, Assistant Professor, University of Nottingham, Malaysia campus, and also a member of RIAC. You have the floor.
Thank you so much. Good day to everyone. I'm also a little bit confused about the time zones. I'm actually ahead of Pakistan right now. So for me, it's even deeper into the afternoon. I guess my role here today is to present a little bit from the joint paper that RIAC came up together with SVI some time ago. I think it was published in 2020 on, it was quite a long and hectic process of editing, on Russia, Pakistan, and the Gulf. And how can we put all of them together, and if we can find some nodes of effective interaction. Unfortunately, my other colleagues from who also worked on preparing the report, well, Ruslan is here, but we don't have Grigory Lukyanov and Wakasjan, unfortunately, so I will have to represent them all, I guess. But Ruslan, I hope you can correct me if there will be anything that I'll miss, but definitely needed to be said about that. I also wanted to note that I guess we all would like to see some comprehensive picture of what's happening in the Middle East right now and how Russia and Pakistan fit in there, and can we find some points of interaction for us and do something productive together, apart from, you know, a little bit here, a little bit there, and we are trying to collect it together as pieces of a puzzle. But I'm not sure how much it's possible, and even I think in the report that our colleague Vasily Kuznetsov is going to present to Valdai Club tomorrow, you're not coming up with the comprehensive description of the future Russia role in the region. And that would be one of the questions that we would like to have an answer to, not to criticize the report. And I would like to see a full text. Unfortunately, I just had to read, as all the others, about it from today's newspapers. So very impatiently waiting for it. But I'm very, in this regard, I'm very thankful to His Excellency here for opening the session with a brief content of the previous episodes of this series, speaking of the Middle East and Russia and Pakistan role in the recent development. So I'm just going to highlight several things that we talked about in the joint RIAC-SVI report. First of all, a little bit about, I'm sure it's been said in one way or another, but just to remind of the principles of how Russia positions itself in the Middle East. It builds this policy based on the principle of sovereignty of the states and the importance of the principle of non-interference. Syria would be one example of that, where you will hear very often that Russia explaining its presence there, that it's having its forces on the ground upon the invitation of the legitimate Syrian government. The principle of neutrality, which provides it with an opportunity to present itself as an independent mediator. And if it were to choose between the long-term building long-term strategic alliances and preserving this image of neutrality, it would choose the latter. So there would be no concept of brotherhood that we could talk about between different states, and as much as possible, it would be trying not to choose one over the other. Another thing and another aspect, and I think I'll talk about it a little bit more later, is that Russia and some of the regional actors, for example, Iran, which was already mentioned not once today, they would attempt to support an alternative regional order to the one offered by the US or the one dominated by the US, not anti-US, but coming up or maintaining establishment of some alternative to this. It's also, maybe it looks obvious, but since I hear it over and over again questioned during various discussions, it's free from ascertaining itself as a torchbearer of democracy. It looks at things pragmatic, unlike some other actors, needless to say. It looks at things pragmatically, so it also can afford itself to come up with a Middle East peace plan, which it attempted also no once to do so. I think we could explore within the Q&A session. I think Dr. Kuznetsov could even talk about this in a more elaborate manner. So its attempts to come up with a kind of a peace plan, of a future peace plan, have better chances to be perceived in a neutral manner without excessive emotions, since it was adhering to the principle of neutrality so well. Don't take me wrong, I'm not a mouthpiece of propaganda here. And right now, me and my American colleagues, we are working on some project which is dedicated to Russia and the United States countering terrorism in the Syrian chapter. And we've heard during the course of our research, we've already heard a lot of responses to our request for an interview of a kind that President Putin eats newborn for breakfast, so we're not going to talk to you. So don't think that I'm trying to promote some kind of a line here. Another aspect that I wanted to pay attention to is and it was in the list of the questions, is Russian position on Iran nuclear program. Well, just a few notes on this. First and foremost is that Russian position hasn't changed for a long time. It looks at the matter within the framework of nuclear non-proliferation. Second is that it has, or at least used to have, its own dose of suspicion over how peaceful the Iranian nuclear program is, and we can go as well back as to the SVR 1993 reports, where there were suspicions about Iran trying to revive the Shah's ambitions to get its hold onto the nuclear weapons, or at least nuclear capability. And also during the 90s, it was at various platforms, it was discussed quite intensively about the participants of other countries of the region, or other nuclear, other actors within the system of nuclear non-proliferation or proliferation. And of course, Pakistan's name was one of them, among them. So when Iran also came up with its Natanz reactor in 2002, it also undermined this trust that it was able to build with Russia and to gain its support on the nuclear program track. However, with the lack of information confirming the real intentions of confirming the intentions of Iran to get the hold onto the nuclear weapons, Russia always stood for that, treating Iran as the full-fledged member of the international system. And for that reason, it's been taking the side, not Iran's side, but the side of the DCPOA as an international document, in negotiation of which it's played a significant role. And the eventual plan was also based on some previous ideas suggested by Russia. With Iran, nevertheless, it has, unlike some of politicians on both sides, although probably more often on the Iranian side, would like to see that our relationship is of a strategic character. It's not, but we've seen a number of fruitful interactions, maybe tactical ones, or of course, if we talk about this different version of the Middle East as an alternative one, then it could be called strategic. Otherwise, it would be rather tactical or ad hoc ones. For example, the episode of Russia using the Iranian base in Hamadan in 2016. I think it drew a lot of international attention. And of course, Russia's pragmatic attitude to its relationship with Iran as well, since it has its interest in the sphere of peaceful atom. So on the one hand, that's an economic interest, but that's also a matter of prestige. And it's again a matter of standing for something alternative, not the international rules-based order that Russia tends to criticize, but the order that has been laid centuries ago and acknowledges primacy of sovereignty and the principle of non-interference, and so on. When it comes to Pakistan, well, I might be speaking of a cliche, but I think in 2019, within the event kindly organized by SVI that I also attended, there's been a lot said about cooperating on counterterrorism. Again, it might be a little bit of a cliche, but in view of Pakistan, quite fruitful and economically well-backed cooperation with China in view of the recent agreement signed between Iran and China. I think we could very well talk about the joint effort on counterterrorism for at least these four actors, as Pakistan, China, Russia, and Iran, probably on such a platform as SCO. And luckily, it's already accumulated a number of documents where the parties confirmed their adherence to counterterrorism effort. And yeah, and in an attempt to wrap it up, I would like to come back to my previous point on this idea of creating or building or allowing to the current security order to evolve into something that is envisioned by regional countries such as Middle Eastern countries, Russia, and Pakistan as well, as a sort of an alternative is good. And it's often that I hear from the Pakistani colleagues the support in favor of such an idea. Or there was an episode at the end of 2019 when Prime Minister Mahathir rallied Imran Khan and President Erdogan into supporting his idea of a sort of an alternative to the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Unfortunately, Imran Khan, for quite natural reasons, could not, had to excuse himself from attending the summit. Nevertheless, he came back later to explain. So to have this kind of idea is good, and I can observe support for this kind of idea. But at the same time, it needs to be backed by something stronger. We can see that nothing came out of the KL summit and this possible alternative to the OIC, which Russia was looking at it with quite an interest as well, as far as I remember. It needs to be backed by something that my colleagues today, earlier today already talked about, by economic cooperation, by some joint ventures, which at least some of them should be thinking about the possibility to innovate and to innovate together, as opposite to borrowing technology and innovation from elsewhere and just trying to build some joint venture based on that. And in terms of economic cooperation, I'm glad that Karachi-Lahore pipeline was mentioned today, but I'm also quite grieving for the project, which I don't think we've heard any updates about it for a couple of years. The Iran-Pakistan pipeline, the one that first had an idea of being an on-land one, and Iran even built its part of the pipeline. Then it was decided to shift it underwater, and then I don't think there were any updates about the project. I think it could be a kind of substantial economic basis of economic cooperation, which would also urge this need to maintain security, the border security. And that was the reason why they actually moved it, the project underwater, or at least the draft of the project. I'm not sure there was any construction effort that started for security reasons, to provide for security. So that could be one thing that, one base that would inform the need to cooperate in terms of security. And Russia was interested in that pipeline project. I think it had a stake at it at some point as well, before passing it on to China. I guess I will stop in here, and I will be happy to answer any questions within the Q&A session, and I hope Ambassador rejoined us while I was speaking. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Julia, for your very valuable thoughts on the situation in the Gulf, non-proliferation, what Prime Minister Imran Khan wanted to do and why he didn't go to Malaysia, and a proposal for quadrilateral cooperation on counter-terrorism. Thank you for your reference to the report, which has been jointly produced by RIAC and SVI. I've gone through this report. It's very informative, very detailed, and it brings out the current situation in the region, what happened in the past, and also Russian interests as well as Pakistani interests, and what we can do together. We have a forum with Russia. We have several mechanisms with Russia to discuss various issues, including non-proliferation issues, counter-terrorism issues, and I would certainly convey this proposal for a quadrilateral cooperation to our diplomats in Moscow and Islamabad to consider this in or discuss this in our future deliberations. This is a new proposal that you made, and what Prime Minister Imran Khan, Malaysian Prime Minister, Turkish President were trying to do was also in the same context. We keep thinking, diplomats as well as researchers, writers on various issues, they keep proposing new ideas for cooperation, and it was in that context. But it was presented in such a way that certain countries didn't like it, and therefore, based on our relations with countries in the Gulf, Prime Minister thought that he should respect their thoughts. That was the context. Now, I would like to offer the floor to Ambassador Arif Kamal. You have the floor, sir.
Well, thank you so much, and I must apologize for the disconnect that is not very common here, but it took me off the track for a while. First of all, I must express my pleasure, delight to have seen after decades Qazi Khalilullah, the ambassador, and also I can take this opportunity to say my salams to Professor Belogorensky, whom I knew as first secretary, but then we reconnected only a few months back over the email, and he reviewed my newly launched book prior to its marketing. Thank you so much. And first of all, let me pick the thread from one of my statements made in a similar forum, which has recently been referred to. And I had probably echoed what we all like to believe in, a comparison of the transforming environment in the colonial era and in the later day Cold War era. We knew of a Russian beer from the cold, it is amazing how the perceptions change and how we all are hoping to witness the evolution of a new architecture. Today, Pakistan is seen as a zipper, let me repeat, zipper of the trans-regional connectivity. And the beer from the cold as a that's very much welcome to the warm waters, including that of Gwadar. Thank you so much, SVI and the Russian Institute for International Affairs for bringing us together on this platform again. And to really brainstorm or at least identify elements that to be brainstormed in the days ahead on prospects of peace and progress in our common habitat. Of course, we live in a transforming environment around us, and this brings us to a spotlight on connectivity rather than erecting walls and barriers, and on cooperation rather than containment. So today we ought to come to grips with the challenges and opportunities that are unfolded in these transformations as we hope to move from a unipolar order to a multipolar or a non-polar order, and hoping to see an end to monopolies if that can come. And as we think of not offering another what you call classical case of missed opportunities that is the hallmark of our relationship in the past decades. Ladies and gentlemen, the discussion on this framework, this framework, in fact, has been very eloquently addressed in the first session, fulfilling a lot of need to fulfilling a lot, and again asking us to see through how to move beyond the deliberative exercises that we have been witnessing in the past more than a 1 year's time. Several steps will have to be awaited to break the hangover of the Cold War. I just mentioned about the Iranian pipeline and the interests and still the inability to undertake a move forward. So when we talk of looking beyond what you call the Cold War, we also need to have a very pronounced political will to break those barriers that have been erected in an era that is fast eroding, and we'll see it behind us. So we have a commonality of interests in what you call your near abroad, and what we see as our next door, and therefore this remains this broader zone remains an important thing, important aspect, a key aspect in our security calculus here and there in Moscow. And therefore, I think the search that we call, that I like to call as a shared objective of looking for sustainable peace and progress. So I think it will be very much legitimate in these in the quest that we have for to strive for a safer and a progressive world. It will be legitimate in our common neighborhood, from Indus to Suez, I may call it, or from Caspian to the Straits of Hormuz. So I think we need to keep in view in this discussion, and I think that's been already stated in many ways, but someone has to really take the wrap up and see how we can link it up, all that in one chain. I think the idea that comes out of on the architecture is idealistic, yes, but not very far away from today's contemporary transforming environments. It may seem to be a theoretical emphasis of today and not very much practical, because people are more obsessed or overwhelmed, I would say, with the hotbeds of conflict that continue to exist. We know of Afghanistan is not yet an end product. We see the what you call the Persian-Arab rivalry, the two sides, two flanks of the Gulf. We also see what is being missed here and missed elsewhere in the discussion fora. that there is a widening gap between the power elites and the street. And that too is an important factor that has to be taken into consideration in any security calculus if you are looking for a longer term and sustainable peace mechanism. Then, of course, people seem to think that the Palestinian dilemma, the Palestinian situation has been backtracked, but we do not seem to appreciate that this is a cause of the have-nots, and it has the potential of linkage with others in the arena. And therefore, any turning of backs on this issue would also have implications. Again, I think that from these hotbeds, one also cannot really foresee any departure from the roles which the extra-regional powers are playing in this region. So if we are talking of a security architecture that would be sustainable, I think the question would come time and again, even if we just forget about it for the time being, are the foreign military bases in the Gulf. Now, this is my personal view, and I don't represent the government. But then I think that as long as you have active engagement of the distant neighbors in the region, you cannot foresee freedom of the competing powers, the competing regional powers, to engage with themselves and to gain from a dialogue amongst themselves, see the models of how the infighting ended in Europe after hundreds of years, and how they started really agreeing to do's and don'ts of their own new time, and of how to regulate the affairs from an accent on economy. So I just say this because these are the ideas that have already been articulated. But I think one needs to see that there are 4 or 5 dimensions to the Gulf architecture building, even if it's incremental, it moves ahead and is faster than we think. But I think the nuclear dimension is, of course, one. And then, of course, the security of the waterway and the passage is important. If we are trying to build a consensus from within the region and with the forces that are at play, and they do not necessarily belong to the region. And then again, I think it will also be important to at least initiate a dialogue as to how the foreign or the overseas military presence in the region, the military presence, can be gradually or incrementally transformed to an economic engagement rather than a show of muscles. Uh, of course, all these put together would enhance the possibility of confidence building measures between the two flanks of the Gulf. And then, of course, we also need to see as to who would be the partners in promoting a new order in that area. And I think having said all that, I think the building of a new security architecture is theoretically very good. It's ideal. But when we unfold this in any greater measure, it would come across challenges and in terms of how to operationalize it. And we know that the security dilemma between GCC, Israel versus US versus Iran is not a single issue related question, and therefore it needs to be addressed. Again, the American involvement, even though we call it eroding unipolar order, is still powerful in terms of the local specifications of its engagements. And therefore, it will be important to see as to what it means in terms of their own physical military presence or otherwise. And again, what kind of threat perception it generates for one flank of the Arab world, of the Middle East, of the Gulf, say Iran, at the cost of the others. So I think these factors will have to be very much taken into consideration if we are looking at a regional security architecture proposal to move forward. And again, until then, I think the best course, in my view, I'm a generalist speaking from a distance, we are among a stream of specialists, but I think would be some sort of Russia-Pakistan mediated a détente of sorts between the Saudi, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and between the Islamic Republic of Iran. And that could be an incremental process, and that may not necessarily come with one go, but it can be a multi-pronged initiative, say in the field of moving back to nuclear deal that is enacted, also cooling off propaganda warfare against between the two flanks, and that could probably help to materialize. I think Pakistan and Russia may have extremely good relations with segments of the Middle East and in the Gulf. Russia has made new inroads. Yes, Pakistan has a traditionally very strong relationship, which may have gone dormant in parts, but it has a civilizational roots, and it has the great ability to be to use its good offices, because from the very outset, as we learned it from the 1960s and 70s, Pakistan is not Arab. Pakistan is not Ajam, and still Pakistan is there in that geopolitical setting. And therefore, it is not something that comes with only immediate strategic interests. It's a long-term chain that has to be utilized, mobilized, and put to use. And I think if we go by the Russian concept of collective security in that region, I think we need to also check as to what first steps will be taken, and that too will come with what you call, say, support from a third party as well, which is already well entrenched in the connectivity aspects. And that is, I mean, if there is this Russian Pakistani initiative for data between the two regional powers, I think China can also be asked to join hands. And then, of course, when we take this kind of an initiative, it will have to be shortly backed up by the economic muscles, and therefore we don't have a a a, a, a flotilla running in the Gulf Straits of Hormuz, and therefore I think here it's important for Russia to keep in view not that they are obliged to follow the Chinese model, but any diplomatic activity which is between Russia and Pakistan and supported by China as well will attain greater credibility and impact with both sides, both flanks of the Gulf, if it is also joined by the economic engagement process to enhance. And I think here Russia has to rethink what it's been planning to do and how big and how small. I don't want to be, on your, taxing on your time, but I must emphasize that we need to also keep in view that this is again very important, that the Iranian fears the threat perception is to be assuaged, it is to be addressed. And if it is not addressed, then the tensions may subside with an initiative that you and us may undertake, but it would not go away. And therefore, we need to understand that anything that relates to foreign presence will always be seen, as long as, of course, there is the same power elite in Tehran, it will be seen as a threat. And that too also would necessitate that the major powers also take into consideration the process of a dialogue amongst themselves and with Washington, because it's not just enough to revamp or to wishfully think that the nuclear deal will be revamped. In fact, the nuclear deal has all the ingredients to take care of one aspect of the threat perceptions on the Arab side of the but then to bring it back, I think there are a few aspects that need to be kept in view. First of all, it's not just the Americans. I think the Russians needs to talk to other signatories and see how they can make a common cause in bringing it back. I think the Iranians and the Russians are and the Americans are looking at who will take the first step. And I think a lot of time has been lost, will be lost in that process as to who moves first. But in having said all this, I think there is enough food for thought for us to skeleton something with that will come from the as a recommendations from SVI and from their counterpart in Moscow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador Arif Kamal, for a very interesting and balanced presentation. It contained many themes. I was particularly pleased to see emphasis on connectivity and development. This is what we as a region, including China and Russia, are trying to promote. We have common interests in Central Asia. That's given. And thank you for suggesting elements for a new security architecture, which should come from within, and the foreign military presence should also, in due course, think about the economic engagement, as China is increasing its economic muscle and not using the military muscle, and that is helpful, and that improves the environment and what you call common habitat. Your proposal for mediation between Saudi Arabia and Iran is well taken. And in addition to China that you yourself suggested, I would also suggest the US, because it is the security provider in the region. In the case of Afghan Moscow format on Afghanistan, we have also seen that all three powers, China, Russia, and the US, are present, plus all those countries that are most relevant. So this is a good model for us, and that can be used. Our last speaker is Ayosha Khan, and she works in SVI. And let me also welcome Dr. Zafar Cheema, President of SVI, after Ayosha. If you would wish to say something, we would welcome. Ayosha, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ambassador. The topic I'm given today is based on few of the important security concerns for Pakistan vis-a-vis Middle East, and regardless of that, there are few, but they are very important security concerns, such as the issue of non-proliferation, peace and security, and counterterrorism. The region's geopolitics is defined by instability and rivalry along some of the world's most divisive fault lines, which include religious, sectarian, political aspects. And Pakistan is situated as the crossroads of South Asia and Middle East. It gets directly affected by the volatile situation in the Middle East due to geographical proximity and cultural ties of its population with Middle Eastern countries. Pakistan Middle Eastern policy is centered on its relation with other Muslim countries, where Pakistan's basic foreign policy option was to develop friendly relations with all other Muslim countries. In this regard, Pakistan opted and adopted the policy of neutrality whenever a conflict between the two Muslim countries erupted. Pakistan's Middle Eastern policy option is the product of its security concern, where Pakistan's major concern is to avoid or minimize the domestic fallout of inter-regional tensions from rivalry between Middle Eastern countries while trying to maintain economic and strategic relations with these Middle Eastern states at the same time. So for security and stability in Middle Eastern region, Pakistan's effort and actions have been more geared towards preserving the status quo rather than altering it. And Pakistan's objective was not just to achieve security for itself, but also to achieve peace and stability in the Middle East. The intent was even mentioned in the statements by the Pakistan's current Prime Minister when he stated that Pakistan should play the role of the healer and the pacifist in the Middle East. The intent was reiterated again by the Pakistan Special Advisor to PM on National Security in one of his interviews as well. Now coming to the security concerns and prospects for cooperation. Today, one of the biggest security concerns regarding Middle East is the threat of nuclear proliferation. In this regard, recent development have highlighted the security concerns for Pakistan. Pakistan, despite being non-signatory of the NPT, has been involved in nuclear diplomacy and has been advocating restraint, non-discrimination, and responsibility in the international arena. But for non-proliferation and disarmament, Pakistan has proposed many actions to stop even nuclearization in South Asia, which include the proposal of nuclear weapon-free zones for South Asia in 1990's proposal for mutual inspection of each other's nuclear facilities between India and Pakistan, bilateral ban on nuclear tests, Treaty of Zero Missile Zone. Even today, as an active member of the United Nations Conference on Disarmament, recently Pakistan presented an 11 points roadmap to build the global consensus on nuclear proliferation and non-conventional domains at national and international level. The special session on nuclear disarmament has unanimously agreed on it. Other than that, Pakistan is also adhering to Convention on Physical Protection of Nuclear Materials and Facilities and IAEA safeguards. So Pakistan's nuclear diplomacy is not only centered toward itself, but also entails the objective of strengthening non-proliferation efforts in the global arena without undermining the legitimate security concerns of the states. The withdrawal of US from JCPOA and its effects of its secondary sanctions, the continuing confrontation over Iran's nuclear and missile program has provoked several strategic uncertainties in the region. Moreover, interest expressed by the other Middle Eastern countries in acquiring nuclear technology and Israel's nuclear program is also considered as the biggest threat in the nuclear weapon biggest threat or a hurdle in the future of a nuclear weapons-free zone. In this regard, UN draft resolution on the risk of non-proliferation in the Middle East was drafted and it was accepted by many nation states, but nothing significant has done so far on it. In the current scenario, and the role of regional threat perceptions in both Israel's nuclear weapon program and Iran missiles policies, as well as growing appetite of other nuclear weapons in other countries, it is necessary to begin disarmament and non-proliferation dialogue, followed by the immediate concrete actions to address the issues facing the region. Islamabad and Moscow are already conducting talks on nuclear arms control, non-proliferation, disarmament under the banner of Pakistan-Russia Consultative Group on Strategic Relations. So both states have similar views when it comes to matter like non-militarization of outer space, development of precision conventional weapon systems, and development of ballistic missile defense system as well. Pakistan Foreign Office also commented on the US withdrawal from Iran nuclear deal, that treaties and international agreements concluded through painstaking negotiations are sacrosanct, and withdrawal from such agreements undermine confidence in the value of dialogue and diplomacy. Thus, to enhance proliferation measures in the Middle East, both Russia and Pakistan could play a role in the revival of JCPOA, where both countries believe that US withdrawal from the treaty and sanctions are not positive developments. In this regard, his newly elected Biden-Harris administration has said that return to the nuclear deal with Iran is one of the main foreign policy agendas, which provide both Russia and Pakistan an opportunity to rely on their nuclear diplomacy. Moreover, to strengthen non-proliferation and nuclear safety and security in the Middle Eastern countries, where many countries are going towards having a civilian nuclear technologies, the technical parameters regarding nuclear safety and security in both states can contribute and collaborate with other Middle Eastern partners on it. So for the objective of maintaining peace and security in the Middle East, it is important for Pakistan that major blocs of the Middle Eastern regions share stable relations among themselves. Protracted conflict in Syria and war in Yemen were the causes of concern for Pakistan, as war in Syria gave birth to the terrorist outfits like ISIS, and Yemen conflict caused a humanitarian crisis and brought two major regional blocs and flanks in direct confrontation with each other. In both cases, there is a significant vacuum left by international actors for resolution of conflict, as both Pakistan and Russia are working towards maintaining relations with Saudi Arabia and Iranian bloc, and both have stakes in peace and security of the region because of their joining borders with the Middle East can work together. Nonetheless, it will not be an easy task, but at least an effort should be made aimed at toning down the situation between Iran and Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. If not achieving a rapprochement and advocating peace and stability, because boosting relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran can help to bring peace and halt unrest in some regional countries and prevent spread of sectarian violence in the region as well. Terrorism and counter-terrorism is another area that demands serious attention and is a security concern for Pakistan, because Pakistan has been faced this menace since 9/11 and is one of the and has been the frontline state against the global war on terrorism since 9/11. So far, it launched 12 major critical operations to clear its tribal areas and rural areas from terrorist factions like Al-Qaeda and Taliban and their local subsidiaries. To clear the urban centers for terrorist outfits, Pakistan is also conducting the major military operation. At the moment, as a result of these operations, Pakistan has witnessed a decline in terrorist attacks and casualties. So considering but considering the porous borders of Pakistan, influx of terrorist outfits from Afghanistan and Middle East is becoming a serious concern for Pakistan. Pakistan is interested in long-term peace and stability in its adjoining country of Afghanistan and the region of Middle East. In this regard, both states, Russia and Pakistan, have been conducting military exercises with special focus on counter-terrorism efforts. In 2018, both countries planned to establish a commission on military cooperation to counter Islamic State threat in the region. So as a way forward, as both countries have suffered immensely at the hands of terrorism and they can cooperate with each other in combating this threat, Pakistan and Russia can formulate joint mechanism for intelligence sharing and joint operations. This move would have a profound impact on the regional anti-terrorism search and complement the international counter-terrorism efforts as well. So this is all from my side. Thank you so much, Ambassador. Over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Ayosha, for sharing Pakistan's priorities and perspectives on various issues that are relevant globally as well as regionally, including non-proliferation, arms control, counterterrorism, economic cooperation, etc. We do this because of two reasons. Number one, we support arms control, non-proliferation at the global level. And another reason is that we share border with a nuclear weapon state with which we have had wars in February 2019. We had our airspace intruded by a neighbor. We had to shut down the aircraft. This kind of confrontation or attack by one nuclear weapon state against the other had never been launched in the history of mankind. So it's always Pakistan's effort to tell the world, share our thoughts, the world, that arms control and non-proliferation issues and strategic stability, these are very important and must be taken seriously, and due weightage should be given to them. We have consumed the time allocated to us very ably, but if someone wants to share comments for a minute or two, I think we can entity. Well, if there are no comments or questions, then I would like to thank our speakers and guests. It was a very productive session. A lot of information was shared on many important issues, including how Pakistan and Russia can work on those issues. And also, I would like to appreciate the good work that is being done by SVI and RIAC. It started with a joint report, which is, from my perspective, excellent. And I enjoyed reading it, and it was heartening to participate in this webinar conducted jointly. I hope such webinars would become a regular feature between the two think tanks. With this, I take leave and Dasvidanya.
I would like to maybe give the floor for some closing remarks also to Dr. Zafar Iqbal Cheema, to the president of the Strategic Vision Institute. Before that, I would like to once again thank the chair of the second session, Ambassador Qazi Khalilullah. It is our honor to hear how you're leading this session, and to actually, for me, it's like to look and have and trying to have some exchange of experience of how to do this. So we had a great session. I would like to give the floor to Dr. Zafar Cheema for some closing remarks. Dr. Cheema, can you switch on the mic, please?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, now yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I think both the session has been very productive, as Ambassador Qazi said. They're very educative, they're very learned, they're candid as well at the same time, between the prospects of cooperation between Russia and Pakistan, and a lot of possibilities have been discussed. So I will not take further time. We're already at the close of 3 o'clock. I would like to thank the panelists of both the sessions on behalf of the SVI. I would also like to thank both the moderators, Raslan Mamdev and Ambassador Qazi Khalilullah, who did a great job. And I'm also very grateful to the participants who have taken a long time of 3 hours to really take interest and listen to the proceedings of the webinar between Strategic Vision Institute and Russian International Affairs Council. So my profound thanks, and especially my profound thanks to Russian International Affairs Council, Dr. Andrey Kortunov and Ruslan Mamdo for really helping the SVI in conducting such a good way, such a webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cheema. It is always, we are always glad to work with the Strategic Vision Institute. I would like to just, in the end of this meeting, share some of the background that we had together. I mean, the relations between Russian International Affairs Council and Strategic Vision Institute is continued, not for a year or two. I mean, we have a history already, and definitely thank you for mentioning that, me being in Islamabad, but many of our experts visited Islamabad for the recent years, and we're always glad to receive and to invite Pakistani experts to the Russian International Affairs Council. And not once Dr. Cheema himself visited RIAC, and it is our honor as well. From here, I would like to also give some thanks to our distinguished speakers of the first and the second session. I think that this discussion contributes greatly to the success of the analytical experience of the experts in Russia and in Pakistan. And I would like to also thank those who are watching us online here in Zoom via YouTube and Facebook page. The video is recorded and will be published on the YouTube channels of the Russian International Affairs Council and the Strategic Vision Institute. I would like to also thank those who developed and brought us to this meeting, the experts who contributed to the joint report, the concrete product that we made last year, and it was written and co-authored by Julia Rokhnefart, Grigory Lukyanov, and Mohammad Vakazjan. The last two participants are not presented today, but they made huge work together, moving to this report being published, and we really have a concrete basis in moving forward on that. Also, I would like to thank the managers on the SVI side who helped us to get distinguished offers and organize this meeting. I would like to thank personally dear Sadia Kazmi, who is watching us and helped to bring all of us here together today, as well as our technical staffs who made technical staff of RIAC and the Strategic Vision Institute, who professionally made this event gone without any problems on the technical side. That's important also point. So from this, I think that we can continue our cooperation in the future. Thank you very much for all of our speakers, all our those who listen us, our audiences. So thank you, and hope for new events. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello.